What's up guys, Asian here, yet another video here. This time we're going to be discussing something that's kind of confused players from time to time, and that's direct damage. What exactly is direct damage, as well as what is a damage over time ability. While those things might seem intuitive, there's a lot of abilities that kind of work counterintuitively in terms of what CPs they specifically are affected by. So, in case you guys don't know, go into the champion point system right now. There are a couple of CP points. This is kind of where the question stems from. So you have Mastered Arms, which increases your damage done with direct damage attacks. And you have Thaumaturge, which increases your damage done with damage over time effects. Now, there's been a lot of back and forth about what counts as direct damage and what doesn't count as Thaumaturge. So I'm going to show you guys a way to kind of test out what abilities count as direct damage and what count as damage over time. There are resources. I believe there is a spreadsheet that I will link down in the description below if I find it, that does list which abilities are affected by which CPs. There have been a lot of comprehensive testing done on the PTS and live server to figure out which abilities are affected by which CPs. So once I find that spreadsheet, I'll link it down in the description below. But I'm going to show you guys kind of how you can test it yourself. If you don't trust the internet, I mean, come on, it's on the internet, it has to be true, right? So this is kind of how you should do it. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into your champion point system and redistribute your points. What you're going to do now is that you're going to take all your points out of Thaumaturge and Mastered Arms, so you have 0 points in either of them. You're going to confirm your change. By the way, this will take up some gold. This will take up probably around 9,000 gold max if you want to do a very thorough test. So do keep that in mind. 9,000 gold is required. If you're at the point though where you're trying to figure out what is direct damage and what isn't, the gold might not be that big of a deal, but it is something to keep in mind. So just be ready to pay some gold in order to figure things out. So I took out points in Mastered Arms and Thaumaturge. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here and look at the tooltips for whatever ability you want to figure out. So two abilities that I already know which CP points are affected by it. Screaming Cliff Racer is obviously affected by Mastered Arms. It deals direct damage because it deals all of its damage in one go. But something like Fletcher Infection is another obvious one. It is a damage over time ability, so it's going to be affected by Thaumaturge. But there are a couple abilities that might be a little bit not entirely clear what it counts as. So Winter's Revenge, for example, is an ability that you might think is a damage over time because it deals damage every 1 second for 12 seconds. But on the other hand, you could also think of it as a direct damage. Is it dealing direct damage every 1 second for 12 seconds? So this is kind of where this testing methodology will come into play. So we're going to be looking specifically at a couple of skills here. We're going to be looking at, for right now, we're going to be looking at Winter's Revenge. We're also going to be looking at Elemental Blockade, Crushing Shock. Going to look at Destructive Touch as well. I guess we'll morph it to Clench, because Clenched does have an interesting. There are some abilities that are like this, where it deals an initial hit, and then it deals a damage over time there's a damage over time component afterwards. So these abilities may be affected by both. So we're going to find out today, or at least you guys will be able to find out today, whether this is the case or not. So once you know what abilities that you want to test out, you're going to go back into your champion tree, and you're just going to put points into Mastered Arms or Thaumaturge, whichever one you want to test out first. I'm just going to put 100 points into Mastered Arms. So before we commit these points, we're going to take a look at the abilities that we want to check out. I'm going to put them all on this front bar here. So for Ultimate, we're going to look at Northern Storm. Say Blockade, Crushing Shock, Cliff Racer, Clench. We'll do Fletcher Infection as well. Alright. So back over here. We're going to put 100 points into Mastered Arms. So basically what this means is any ability that whose tooltip does not change after we commit our points is not affected by Master at Arms. If the tooltip does change, then it is affected by Master at Arms. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our abilities. So 2010, 9519, 5146 and 7370, 2457 for Flame and Shock, 2572 for Frost since we're a Warden, 18840, and 4475. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and commit our points. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at our abilities again. 2428, 11295, 6152, 7370, 2937 for Flame and Shock, 3052 for Frost, 22356, 5363. So we can see here a bunch of things have changed. Tooltips have changed as a result of our committing our points. We didn't put any points in the Thaumaturge, no points went in the Thaumaturge. So anything that is considered a damage over time effect will no longer have the same tooltip. Because we had 0 points in Thaumaturge before, we have 0 points in Thaumaturge now. Anything whose tooltip has changed, that now deals direct damage. We know it deals direct damage because the only thing we changed was putting points into Master at Arms. So there are a couple of things that you've noticed. Blockade of Fire, the tooltip increased. So now we know Blockade is affected by Master at Arms and not the Thaumaturge. Seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? You would think that Blockade is a dot, because it deals damage every 1 second for 8 seconds. However, as we clearly saw, when we put points into Master at Arms, we went up. Our damage went up by 25% on the tooltip. Cliff Racer is pretty obvious. It's direct damage because it deals all of its damage in one blow. Same thing with Crushing Shock, that comes as no surprise. Flame Clench, like I discussed before, this is one of those few abilities that has both a direct damage component and potentially a damage over time component. So by putting points to Master at Arms, we affected the initial hit, but we didn't affect the damage over time hit. These abilities are, like I said, very few, far between, but it is something to keep in mind. And we see here, Fletcher Infection actually went up when you put points into Master at Arms, even though you would think it was damage over time because it deals its damage all over a period of time. So this is kind of why you want to test things out. Like I said, the spreadsheet that I have in the description has been tested by multiple people, corroborated by multiple people. So we know this is the case, and this is just the way the game is coded. ZOS makes mistakes, like any game developer does, especially in the game with the size and scope of ESO. There's a lot of code to go over, so it's not terribly surprising that Fletcher Infection would count as direct damage. Obviously, we haven't heard any notes from the devs on live, any of the patch notes, incremental patch notes, so we just have to go with it. Same thing here with Northern Storm. The frost damage, it ticks harder. It deals damage every 1 second for 8 seconds. You would think it's a dot, but it's affected by Master at Arms. It seems counterintuitive, but that's just the way the game is coded. Alright, so we obviously, enough about that. So now we have to take out points from Master at Arms and put them in the Thaumaturge, and you basically rinse and repeat. So you see damage went down for Blockade, Cliff Racer, Crushing Shock, Fletcher Infection, Northern Storm. Basically, that to be expected. Flame Clench, we see here the dot component went up in damage, the direct damage went down, so we know that's a dot effect. So that's basically how you figure out what is a direct damage and what is not direct damage. Generally speaking, anything that's affected by Master at Arms will not be affected by Thaumaturge, and vice versa. So you could just spend the 6,000 gold on just Master at Arms and save money that way. Like I said earlier, I'm going to link a spreadsheet in the description below that has all the most if not all the abilities in the game, as well as what CP nodes, I should say, affect each ability. Like I said, these have been tested multiple times across multiple tunes, across multiple accounts. It will give you a sense of where you should put your points, what abilities are affected by which node, and you see just how wonky this can be. So that's it for this video. Hope it helps. I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.